I get a lot of comments and I get a lot of people saying that sobriety is boring, that they're having a hard time in sobriety because it's just so mundane and alcohol just makes things better. Is sobriety even worth it if I'm just bored and nothing's fun? I have no joy, I don't have any hobbies, etc. And if you've tried to be sober for any extended period of time, or you are sober, and you've probably noticed, and if you're watching this video, you've probably noticed that, yeah, sobriety can be boring. So in this video, I just want to give my thoughts on that. Maybe I can offer some advice that'll help you. I was a person who definitely experienced boredom of sobriety. Whenever I wasn't drunk, I was bored. Whenever I was trying to stay sober, it wasn't bearable. I needed alcohol. I learned in my sobriety, in my recovery, through therapy and rehab and AA, that I have a deep longing for connection to other people. I have a hunger for connection. We all do. Every single person has that. We're social creatures and we need that. And what I was doing my whole life was I was shutting myself off from that. And it was causing a hole in my heart. And that hole would be fixed or filled with alcohol or other substances. That's why I drank. I drank for effect. I drank because it made me feel good. When I was sober, I was bored. I was restless. I was irritable. I was discontent. And when I drank, all that went away. There was no activity that I could do without alcohol. I would just become miserable doing it. I'd become bored doing it. I didn't get any joy out of any of my hobbies or any of my things I like doing. I didn't get any fulfillment out of being around people, my family, my friends. I didn't have any of that connection. I needed alcohol to fill that hole within me. So when I get sober, you take away the alcohol, the thing that's worked for so long, I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to be bored. And people can go years and years and years. Don't listen to the myth that it gets better over time, that you just need more time in sobriety, because that hasn't been my experience. The longer I'm sober, the worse I get, the more boring I get. So I got to figure out how to fill this hole that alcohol had been filling. I got to figure out how to do that. And I learned that it wasn't going to just be some hobby or some relationship or something external that I could use instead of alcohol and place it within my soul, and then I'd all of a sudden be happy, joyous, and free. It doesn't work that way. That's not my experience with recovery. If you're someone who drank for a long time, used alcohol because it makes things fun, and don't kid yourself. I mean, I can't kid myself. Some of the most fun times I had in my life were because of alcohol. I'm not going to be in denial and say that alcohol was a horrible thing my whole life, and if I could go back, I would never do it again, because I wouldn't change a single thing about my past. But if you've been drinking for a long time, like I drank 15 years, I used alcohol to fulfill that hole within my soul. You take that away, you're going to have some work to do. And I find that a lot of people that are bored aren't doing anything about it. They get rid of the alcohol and then they just sit there with themselves and they just expect life to be better. Well, here's the truth. Alcohol is not your problem. Your problem is the hole within your soul. Alcohol is the solution to that problem, to fulfill that hole. Now that you've removed the alcohol, you think that alcohol has always been your problem, and now that the alcohol's gone, life is just supposed to be magically perfect. That's not the case. Alcohol was never the problem. It was the treatment. It was the medication for you. That's what it was for me. And if you're bored in sobriety, it's likely that that's what it is for you. So you got to look at it from two different perspectives here. You got to look at it from like the actual physical. You got to look at all the physical things alcohol does to your brain, all the mental and the emotional and the psychological and the physiological. I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but you get what I'm saying. Alcohol fires the dopamine in your brain and it just makes things better. There's that part of it. There's also what I've come to realize, there's also the spiritual side of it. The happy, the joyous, and free, that spiritual side that you also have to address. The reason why I'm always bored is because my own ego has put a shield around my soul, which is shielding me from other people, from the beauty of the world, from being able to have joy in just the simple, mundane things I do in everyday life, my hobbies, the activities I do, going to work, going on walks with my girlfriend and my dogs. My ego has shielded that so that I can experience fulfillment in life. So it's not really boredom that's the problem, it's the lack of fulfillment. People, they want to stop drinking and then they just, that's all they're willing to do. They put the alcohol down, they put the plug in the jug or whatever people call it, and then they expect life to get better. That it doesn't work that way if you're the type of alcoholic that I am. For some people it does work that way. They get rid of the booze, life gets better, they go on their way, great. If you're a person who's very bored in sobriety and you're questioning yourself, is it all even worth it? You probably have that spiritual hole in you. And a lot of people don't like the spiritual word. As soon as they hear spirituality, they shut themselves off from it. They're not willing to accept that maybe that's what the problem actually is, spiritual void. And when I say spiritual, what I'm meaning is just that hole in the soul that alcohol fulfilled that can be filled with love and happiness and joy and connection. I'm not talking about God. I'm not talking about religion. I don't perceive God as the traditional way. I don't even know if I believe in God. I do believe in the spiritual part of my soul, though, that connects me to you and me to everything else in this universe. And it's that hole that has to be addressed. So how do you do that? First, you got to understand that it's your ego that has put that shield, and then you got to start getting rid of that ego. You got to start addressing that ego. You got to start deconstructing it, then reconstructing it. That's what I did in rehab. That's what I did in therapy. That's what I did in Alcoholics Anonymous. A lot of people aren't willing to do those things, to go and do the work in those institutions, if you will. And then they wonder why sobriety sucks and why they're bored and why it's even worth it. You got to address your pride, your self-esteem, all the resentment that you have towards other people, all your fear, all your guilt, all your shame, all the shitty things that you did to other people. All that weighs on you, and it just creates defense mechanisms, and that's what shields your soul. So you got to clean all that up. That's why you're unable to tap into the joy of life sober. That's why you're unable to tap into being fulfilled by the most mundane things. I was watching a bird build a nest the other day, and I thought it was the coolest thing. I got so fulfilled from it. In the past, when I was drinking, that would have been the stupidest thing, and I would have needed to be drunk just to exist around a bird. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But you have to address the whole of your soul. You have to fill in that void. No hobby's going to do it. No new job or new relationship is going to do it, because if you're addicted to alcohol or any other substance, you're an addict or you're an alcoholic or a substance use, whatever you want to call it. If you're just going to replace the alcohol with something else, you're just going to become addicted to that thing, and you're still going to be the same person. Just now you're just going to be addicted to something else. Like workaholics do that a lot of the time. They become addicted to their job, or people that go to the gym, they become addicted to the gym, and they become addicted to how they look, and they need to fix the void within themselves. And you do that spiritually. Identify all your resentments and get rid of them. Forgive the people that you're resentful towards, the people, the institutions, the ideas, because you're just going to carry that baggage with you through life, and that's what's causing you to be bored and not experience any joy in life. You got to address all your fears, and you got to write down all your fears, and then you got to look at it and ask yourself why you're afraid of it. Then you got to see what you've done to make yourself become afraid. I have another YouTube channel that deals with all this stuff. I'll link that channel in the description of this video. So if you're interested in actually dealing with all this stuff, you can go to that channel and kind of get a little bit of an understanding of how to actually address all this stuff. Because I get it, it's easier said than done. I'm just some guy on YouTube saying, oh, you gotta just address your fears and you gotta stop worrying what people think. Like, I get it, okay? It's easier said than done. Go to my other channel and start learning about this stuff. Learning how you can actually address your ego, which is causing this void within you if you're bored in sobriety. I did all this stuff, and I'm no longer bored in sobriety. I am fulfilled. I am the most fulfilled I've ever been. I would not give up my sobriety these last few years I've had for anything. I've had the best time of my life living in my humble house being bored. A little boredom's a good thing. You just got to be okay with the boredom. Be okay with the quiet and the mundane. I'm at peace when I'm alone and by myself and when I have nothing to do. That's because I've addressed the hole in my spirit. That's because I did the work that was necessary. I went and saw the therapist. I went to rehab. I went to detox. I went and I did a bunch of AA meetings, and I still go to AA. And AA isn't the only way. I'm not saying that AA, you have to do AA. A lot of people hate AA. As soon as you hear the word AA, they just get all irritated from it. And whatever, that's none of my business. But what are you willing to do to address the spiritual side of your boredom? Alcohol is what treated that. And you're taking the alcohol away now, so you're left with that hole in you, that void. Remember, alcohol isn't your problem. You being sober, wanting to go and drink is the problem. That's what the true problem is you when you're sober. How are you living life when you're sober? Are you miserable? Are you bored? That alcohol isn't the problem then. If alcohol was the problem, you just remove the alcohol and everything's perfect. La-di-da. Go on your merry way. Down the yellow brick road, whatever. But if that's not the case, then alcohol isn't your problem, and you've proved that to yourself. Your problem is you. Your problem is the hole in here. The problem is your ego protecting that hole. Your problem is all your defense mechanisms. Your problem is your unwillingness to do the work required to fill that hole so that you can experience joy and happiness in the mundane of life. Something amazing, something incredible happens when you realize the truth of reality with how sobriety is boring. When you realize that alcohol has never been your problem, when you realize that life being boring is not the problem, when you realize that it's actually your ego that's causing the problem, your ego shield that is blocking you from being able to enjoy fulfillment and joy while being bored and during the mundane of life, when you realize that it's the ego that's the problem, that's when things get better, because you can address the ego, the resentment, the guilt, the fear. You do the work. You do the work and it's automatic. Your ego gets reconstructed. You destruct it and it dissolves, and then you become open to everything. Even the boring things, you become connected to them, you become fulfilled by them. You get joy from them. I watched a bird build a nest for a half an hour the other day. The most boring thing. I loved it. I was fulfilled by it. It was incredible. I look at my life now and the joy I got from watching a bird build a nest, it was more fulfilling than anything I experienced this week. It was amazing. The old drunk me would have never been able to do that. I would have had to have been drunk to even think about birds. Life being boring isn't the problem. Sobriety being boring isn't the problem. Your ego is the problem. That's just the truth. And a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. You go through life building your ego, building defense mechanisms, carrying around a bunch of baggage, creating a bunch of baggage, dirty, rotten garbage that you carry around with you through life, weighing you down. And then you blame life for being boring. You blame sobriety for being boring. No, that's not the truth. Life is boring, but life is beautiful boring. Believe me. I'll make more videos on this topic to help you deal with all that stuff if you're interested.